Excellent. Exciting. Oh man, look at all the chat going on so far. Sweet. I actually have a lot of apps open. One second. Let me just quit some things here so we don't have any sort of issues or distractions going on during the hangout or during the stream. I don't need VS Code. Don't need YouTube. Don't need. I don't need that. Don't need Mastodon. Man. Okay. Don't need Discord. Don't need any of that stuff. Okay. We're good. Okay. How's everyone doing today? Sweet. Man, we got a lot of the usual suspects. Mark, thanks for popping on. Mr. Cole. Josh, here as always. The big guy is in the house. Mr. Workman in the house. Excellent. Excellent. Oh, Tommy's here. Hey, how's it going, Tommy? Yeah, I was just thinking about you today, actually, Tommy. I hope you're doing well. Tommy of Del Fligger fame, everybody. Del Fligger is still around. We actually have some plans for it. For all of those awesome stacks. They're in the plans. Sweet. Okay, guys. So hopefully you got a little bit of hype going on today, right? If you've joined Hangouts in the past, I don't know, month or two, you may have joined one where I've previewed Bento. Okay, Bento. I'm going to say Bento or Bento. I know it's probably Bento, but for some reason my brain always wants to say Bento. Okay? So, yeah, that's just the way my brain works. So I know it's Bento, but I am going to call it Bento all the time. So bear with me. Okay? Yes, shaved. There's no facial hair. I freshly shaven last night. So there we go. Just for you, Sean. Just for you. Okay. So, hey, Canterbury. Excellent. You're from Canterbury? I actually have been to Canterbury and I had a great time. Your cathedral there is absolutely beautiful. So, anyway, I have a great picture of my son playing soccer with a Brazilian soccer ball right outside the Canterbury Cathedral. It's one of my favorite pictures. Like, I really love it. He's now 21, almost 21. He was like 3 then. Great memories. Had a good time. Great time in Canterbury. Okay. But we want to hear about Bento. Okay. So if you're curious, Paul, thanks for coming on. Easy Fan, thanks for coming on too. Dope Hat, thank you. This is my favorite one. I have it in 2 colors. I got this one in blue. So anyway, this is my favorite color. This is my favorite hat, I mean. Okay. Vienna. Never been to Vienna. It's on the list though. Awesome. Thanks for popping in. Let me go ahead and talk about what Bento is. Okay. You probably guessed. Let's just go. Let's go to the homepage first. Okay. So I'm sure you've been to this website. Hopefully you have. Might be a little important to our community, this website. It's definitely important to me. Okay. And so if we scroll down a little bit, this layout right here. I get questions all the time about how do I create this layout, Joe? I want that layout. And for years I kept saying, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. You'll be able to do it. It's made with stacks. I didn't hand code it. It is made with a stack. I just haven't finished it yet. Right. And this version of the stack that's on my website is actually tightly integrated with Total CMS 2. And we all know that story. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Okay, Total CMS 3 is coming. Total CMS 2 will never ship, but Total CMS 3 is. Okay. And with that, I reimagined a lot of things. And one of those things was this layout needs to happen outside. Like, it needs to be independent. We need to be able to build a layout such as this with anything, right? And so, yeah, I finally decided, you know what? I need to get this done and released. It was one of the stacks I wanted to ship this year, and polish it up, make it work out of the box with whatever. It'll work with total CMS. It'll work with feeds. It'll work with manually creating layouts. Okay. But we'll go into how you can create these. And it's not just this exact layout, right? It's very customizable, as you'll see. Now, there's another layout that I constantly get questions about, and that is on my stacks page. Okay. This layout right here. So this layout can also now be done with Bento. Okay. And so as you see, it is a very similar style of grid. They're two different stacks. Okay. But it's a very different style of grid. Whereas the one on the homepage is very fixed, right? You have a defined grid and that is it, right? You have a defined number of items. That's it. Whereas this one, it's meant to just have kind of an unlimited amount of items. Okay. So you'll be able to add as many items as you want, and we can create rules that will basically create this grid for us. And funny enough, we'll get into actually how I created this exact grid, okay, using Bento. So without further ado, let's go ahead and have a peek. Okay. So I'm going to start. Actually, we're going to start with a new page. Before I actually jump into this, I do want to say this is a pre-launch. Okay. So what does that mean? I've never really done this before. Okay. And Bento, I think the stacks are ready. They're done. They're solid. But I just feel because they're so different than what we've had before, I would love to have more real world experience so that I can make them better before I announce them to the entire world, basically, right? So I thought it would be fun to do a pre-launch. I know there are a few users that really wanted to get their hands on these and really start using them with real live layouts and data and building actual things on their web pages, right? So I thought it would be fun to do a pre-launch. This is a 1.0 product. This isn't beta. I'm confident that it is a great product set, and you'll see how it functions. We'll go over all of it. But I wanted to give you guys the ability to buy it now, because I am working on demos, like building out various layouts and demos, and there's so many possibilities that I'd also want to pick your brains to see what you're building so that I can take that real live information, build the final product demos for the product pages so that everyone can see the potential of this. Okay. So yes, if you want to be a guinea pig for me for building out demos, and hey, if you got ideas and you come up with, hey, I want to create this, obviously I'm going to, do my best to create layouts and add settings and add features and whatnot to build this. Okay. So I added a new space to the community. It is just for this Bento pre-launch. Okay. After I officially launch it, this space will probably be going bye-bye. Okay. But it is a place, either if you want to be a fly on the wall, you can join this space. I've added nobody to it, so you can go. You should see it over here in the sidebar. Okay. Go ahead and click on that, and then you can join the space, and then you can create posts or ask requests. And as you see, the very first post here is the buy link. There is no product page actually for Bento yet. Okay. If you click on the buy link, it takes you literally to the checkout page. Okay. So, it'll check out, you will download it. You will get the demo file that we will see right now that I'm going to be using. And, so that is kind of how the pre-launch is happening. When will I officially launch it? I don't know. It kind of depends on how long it takes you guys to create cool stuff so that I can create a really cool demo. Because I think this has a lot of possibilities And I think together, you know, we'll make it better. Okay. So there we go. Okay, cool. Let's dive in. All right. I'm actually going to dive in. I think it's actually easier with Bento to actually show you how to implement a new one versus going over examples. We'll go over all the examples and how each one's kind of different from each other. Okay. But let's go ahead and create a completely new page. Okay. I do have to also say Bento does not require foundation. Okay, it doesn't require none of my stacks require total CMS. None of them require foundation. Like, okay, like even foundation stacks don't require foundation to some extent. I have FAQs on that. Okay, but anyway, I think we should all be using foundation. But with that said, Bento will work in any theme. Okay, so let's go ahead and it's not in this group anymore. Shoot. All right, we're going to start off by looking at Bento Grid, okay? And the Bento Grid, actually, I think I might just rename this one to just Bento, okay? I actually thought I did, but apparently I didn't rename it to Bento. So Bento Grid is the version of Bento that we have on the homepage, okay? Where it's defining a static grid. I think this is the best place to start. Kind of learning how the concepts of Bento work. Because another thing with Bento is it has an edit mode interface like no other stack we've ever used before. Okay. Another reason why I actually want to kind of ease into it just to kind of get some feedback on how this edit mode interface is. I think I've nailed it. I think it's really, really cool. It's innovative, and I'm excited to show you right now. Okay. So when you add Bento Grid to the page, okay, here, let's go ahead and give us some more space here. So when we add Bento Grid to the page, you'll notice that we have this setup grid buttons, okay, in the settings. And you'll see that we have extra small, small, medium, and large. Now, what is all that? Essentially, what we're doing is we're defining different grids for multiple breakpoints, okay? And I know you're going to want to ask this, what are the breakpoints? Well, if you click this little plus button, you can actually configure exactly what those breakpoints are. Now, by default, these match the Foundation 6 breakpoints, but you can customize them to your hertz extent, okay? There's actually also another cool breakpoint basis, which we'll talk about later. Okay, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. Okay, I just want to talk about building out a grid. So here I have a grid of 16 items, and within this grid of 16 items, I can place my content. Okay, and so how do we do that? First off, we can say, what is my grid? So I'm going to have here, we have 4 by 4. So I can do, let's say I want 5 columns by 5 on large. Okay. So now I have all these cells that I have access to. Now you might think, well, that's just a grid. How am I going to build these cool layouts that are different when all I see here is a grid of cells? Okay. So let's look into that. So by default, we add in a Bento item. Okay. And if you notice up here, we can now define our grid definition for this item. And I'm going to go ahead and set this to be item number 1. Now, if you notice, when I set this to be item number 1, okay, magically, we can highlight, okay, it will highlight that particular item in the grid for us. And guess what? I can change that, right? So if I'm like, I want a different one, okay, let's go with that. There we go. So, and if you notice, actually, I also changed the outline of the edit mode item so that it kind of matches, right? And I also put Bento item number 1 automatically right there in the little stack title. Pretty cool, right? Now here, we can now define our sizing. Now, right now, we can tell that we are on large. You can see it's right here. in the top right corner, it tells us what grid we're previewing. So right now we're looking at large. So let's go ahead and customize this. So on large, let's say I want this to be a 2 by 2. So you see here in large, I set it to be a width of 2 and a height of 2. And it took exactly that much space in my grid. Okay. So now this item is going to be proportionally to all the other items that size. Let's say we want to go a little bit higher. Let's make it like a 2 by 3, right? Pretty cool. Okay. And let's go ahead. I'm kind of happy with that. Let's go ahead and let's add another bento item. And this time we're going to make it number 2. And here we go. I have number 2. I then have the flexibility, obviously, to customize the size of this one, right? And actually, let's go ahead and, for fun, let's go ahead and replicate the, oops, not that one. Let's go ahead and replicate this layout right here. Okay, let's visualize this layout here. What's my lowest common denominator cell? Okay, it's these guys. Okay, so this is obviously going to be a 2 by 2. That's a 2 by 2. That's a 2 by 2. This one's going to be a 4 by 4, right? So that means 2. That means 2, 4, 8 wide by 2, 3, 4 tall. Let's build that grid. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead. Let's back up a little bit. I know I was kind of showing you things, but let's back up a little bit. I'm going to make my large grid. I said it was 8 columns, okay, by 4 tall. Okay, let's reset here. Boop. And item number 1. Okay, let's look at item number 1. That was a 2 by 2. Okay, so item number 1 is going to be a 2 by 2. Awesome. And I'm just going to copy and paste that. Item number 2, okay, was also a 2 by 2. Okay, so there we go. That was a 2 by 2. Okay, and for fun, let's just change the colors because we can. There we go. There's item number 2. Okay, item number 3. Okay, that one was a 4 by 4. All right, so let's go ahead and make that one a little bit different color. All right, let's go lighter. There, make it green. All right, just for fun. These colors are only for edit mode. They have 0. It's just so you can map where items are. None of this is actually related, has nothing to do. None of it is actually ever makes it to your actual web page, these colors, okay? It's purely for you to visualize your grid. This one is going to be a 4 by 4. Okay, pretty cool. Okay, and then we had, let's say, number 4, 5, 4, and 5 were 1 by 1s. Okay, so we let's do number 4. Here, let's make those all 1 by 1s. 1 by 1. And we're gonna do 4, 5. Okay, and then here, I know this is going to be number 7, and and that's number 8. Okay, and then number 6 is going to be, oops, that one was a 2 by 2. All right, number 6 is going to be a 2 by 2. 2 by 2. Whoop. There we go. Look at that, exciting. Okay, so I've built out that grid. There we go. Oh, Martin asked an interesting question. What is bento? Okay, where does that come from? So yes, someone already said it's a bento box. And actually, so if we go to the community, right, and go to bento, right, these boxes, it's normally a Japanese thing. Normally they put sushi and other things in it. But if you notice, the boxes are kind of, these unusual patterns of boxes. And so they call those a bento box. So there we go. Okay. So where was I talking about? Okay. got off on a tangent when I started looking at the chats. Now I broke my concentration. So we have this data now, right? So that I can go ahead and add some content to it. Let's just go ahead and add, doesn't really matter. Let's just go ahead and add let's add in just to make this simpler, I'm going to add in a container, and let's add in a picture stack. I'm just going to add the same one to everything. Okay. Just so that we can see, just to keep things a little bit quick. We'll add the Weaver space PNG. Whoops. What did I do there? There we go. Oh man, that's big. Let's do a fill container and scale image to like 256 max width. Okay. And center image. All right. I'm just going to do the Weaver space logo in each of these. Okay. So let's just go ahead and let's copy it into there, each one. Actually, you know what? We want a little bit of padding too, probably. Let's just go ahead and do P24. No, P32. Oh, I don't have, I'm not seeing because I don't have site styles on the page. There we go. Hold on 1 second. Let's just add site styles so we can utilize our, no, we'll keep that off so people can see things. All right. I thought 24 was one. Yeah, there we go. Okay, P24. All right, so let's just copy and paste that in. Paste that into each of these. All right, there we go. And let's just preview. Oh man, that's. I think it's probably easier to see when we have background colors turned on, because as you see, it did create the layouts that we have a 2x2 and the 3x3. We need colored layouts. At least for that. I mean, just seeing logos all over the place in that particular design probably doesn't look too great. Okay, but hopefully you saw the concept of how this is right now. So we built our large, grid, and then next what we're going to do is we're going to go down to medium, okay? And at that point, we need to design our grid again. And then you kind of go through and you define where number one is going to go, right? The size and how big is number one going to be? Because right now it's by default, it's just a 1x1, okay? So, I'm not going to go through and build this again for medium. We can now start diving into, maybe some of the examples. I also want to show you Bento scroll, but we'll look at some examples here of Bento grid first. Okay. And then after medium, you go down to small. And then after small, you go down to extra small. Okay. And so, yeah, there we go. Stack seems much snappier than on my 2016 MacBook Pro. Yeah, so I actually came from a 2016 MacBook Pro. Like a month ago, I got a new Mac Studio, and however, on my 2016, I mean, it was still pretty decent. On my 2016 MacBook Pro, when I used it all the time, I did have an external GPU that I had plugged in, which I think helped, but I used it a lot without that too. So anyway, okay, let's go ahead and start looking at some of the other demos. Let me see if there were any questions that I missed. Someone asked, did FileMaker? Yes, FileMaker did have a product. Hence, also Apple had a product called Bento. And it's I actually really loved that product when it was out. And yeah, I've never forgotten about that product. It was a good product. So I did kind of steal the name from that too. Even though, I mean, Bento really is exactly what I'm building. We're building Bento grids. Wallpaper for the win, yes. So as Josh said in the chat here, in this demo here, I just use wallpaper. It just makes for a nice looking demo. Okay. And because you could just kind of chuck in a wallpaper, have a nice pretty gradient, and Scott's your uncle. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at some of these demos here. So here's just a very simple grid. Let's see, it looks like that on mobile. On medium, it looks like that on large. On medium, I actually just kind of show you how you can completely swap and change directions of things, right? On medium, I swap number 1 over to be a different location. On small, and then small and extra small, they kind of stack on top of each other. If you're curious what small and extra small, so that is something that Foundation doesn't have. Essentially, small targets most mobile devices, where extra small targets like the really small ones, like the iPhone 3s and iPhone 4s and iPhone. I think after iPhone 5 it was kind of when it stopped. But you can, again, you have full control over all of these, so you can configure whatever you'd like for those. So yeah, let's look at this example here on what we can do. Okay. Because some of this uses a couple other interesting features that I haven't reviewed yet. Okay. So in this example here, we'll notice that again on large, the number 1, well, 2 things. Number 1 is over here, and the number 1 actually isn't even visible. Okay. That was because I was testing something else, which we'll show you also. And then on medium, it flops over here. So when we set up number 1, let's go ahead and look at large. Okay. Before, we've only looked at this item sizing, where number 1 is a 2x2. Okay. It's actually a 2x2 on medium and large. However, okay, what I did was on large, I make number 1 start at column number 3, row 1. So when you click on advanced positioning, you see by default, number 1 wants to start at the very far left, right? But I can actually customize the positions to be wherever I want for this item. So when we click on advanced positioning, we can now define the start and ending positions, or the start positions, by column and row. Okay, so if I'm starting this on column 3, so 1, 2, 3, and I'm starting it at row number 1. Okay, you can start it at row number 2 as well. That doesn't necessarily make sense for the number of layouts for the layout we want to build, right? But just to show you can start it anywhere you want and kind of position your items anywhere inside the grid and have that move for each individual breakpoint, which is pretty cool. We also have some alignment content, issues here, or features. So you can, align that content in the middle, or have it stretch, or go on to the bottom, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, if you noticed here, when we preview this on large, the number 1 was not visible. Okay. And so Bento actually ships with some utility classes that allow you to show and hide things based on the breakpoints. So if we look at this header, I have a class here that says Bento hide for large up. Okay. There's also Bento hide for medium up, small up, extra small up. Okay. So what this does is it will hide this particular item on large. Now, why are these useful? Okay. So if we go back to the homepage here, okay, if you notice this particular layout, I actually display different things based on the size, right? So on this particular item here, or on all the larger items, I display the icon as well as the name of the stack, as well as the little subtitle. However, on these smaller ones, I don't have that much space, right? So I don't display all of this data, right? So utilizing utility classes. Now, if you're manually building this with stacks, then you don't necessarily need these, okay? But if you're using something like, feeds or whatnot, or total CMS to populate the data, these utility classes could be very helpful. Okay, so this is an example, again, of those utility classes in use. Let's see. I think that was the only thing in this demo. It kind of showed the positions. I think that was it. Yes. Okay. In this demo, we showed the position, the advanced positioning, as well as the utility class. Okay. This is the one we created. Let's look at, so here's an example of Bento with feeds. I just want to, this demo here, if you, obviously this file, I should say, this is the one you get when you purchase. So this is download. You can see exactly what all these are. I will probably be updating this as we're designing and coming up with more ideas. And I want to, have more examples based on your questions that you have. So in this example here, I have a Bento grid. Okay. And here I'm actually generating my data, my content using feeds. Okay. Prior to this page, I've been using the Bento item child stack. But you'll probably notice that there's also a Bento rule and a Bento content. Okay. If you're generating data for a Bento stack, you're not going to want to use the Bento item. Okay. Because we want to have the rules and the content kind of separated. So, here's an example of that. So here I just have some CSV data with just some names. Okay. And here I've actually added the Bento content stack. And then here I've used, the feeds data. All I'm doing is injecting the name into a header. Okay. Then above, outside of the feeds stack, but inside Bento, here, let me go ahead and turn off streamlined edit mode. Sometimes people get confused with that. So in Bento grid, I just add the feeds inside of Bento grid. And then inside the feed stack, I would add my Bento content. And then feeds obviously will go through each one and create a Bento content for each individual item in the feed. Then above feeds, we can then add a Bento rule. Again, these are both inside the child stack. And the settings for these rules are exactly what we had in the item. It's just this decouples them. Okay. So here I can now design my grid just as I did before. We can have large, medium, small, and extra small. Okay. And I can define all my sizing and my highlight colors just like I did before. Okay. There's just that this rule stack doesn't have content associated with it. It's just the rule. So let's preview this. So here we have the grid. Okay. And as you see, it's populated with feeds, and the grid changes based on my grid definition rules. Pretty cool, right? Now, funny enough, I have measure on this stack or on this page. And funny enough, I actually built measure to help me debug and build better things with Bento. Okay. And the reason for that is, I'm going to jump examples here. The reason for that was this page. Okay. Let's look at this example. This is kind of more of another real life example of what we can do with Bento. And if you notice, it's just a simple card layout. Okay. The Bento is inside each of these cards. Okay. So I have 3 Bento. Oops, my page changed. I have 3 Bento grids on this page, and they're all the same exact grid. Okay. They're just 3 individual Bento grids, right? Each one is inside of a card stack. And then the grid is for the actual content of the card. Now, normally, what we'll notice here is, again, this is the same exact Bento grid, yet the layouts are slightly different. Okay. And the reason for that is these Bento grids if we look at the breakpoint settings, another thing about the breakpoint settings, some stacks, if you show and hide this, it actually like turns on and off those settings. This just shows and hides the settings. Whatever you change these settings to, they will always be in effect. If you this plus and minus thing purely shows and hides it. Okay. So these settings are always in effect, no matter if you show or hide them. Okay. They're just a way of setting them if you need them. Okay. But if we notice here, I have the breakpoint basis. By default, it's set to viewport. I have it changed to Bento container. Now, what does that mean? Now, this is something that I've never shipped in a stack before, and it's a different way of sizing our designs. Okay. Now, based on how we react to it and use it in Bento, it will definitely be coming in the next future versions of Foundation. Okay. I do tend to like to introduce kind of new sort of paradigms or features in other stacks before I integrate them into the large major framework, right? So this is our first foray, well, however you say that, into container queries. Now, what is that? So normally, when we think of breakpoints, we think they're always tied to the actual size of the browser. So if my browser window is 1024 pixels, that breakpoint is for that particular pixel size, that browser size. But container queries give us a different way of thinking. What they do is they allow us to measure our breakpoint based on the width of an item on the page. So in this case, I can customize the layout of Bento based on the width of Bento. So if we look here, let's go ahead and go all the way down to a smaller layout. Now, when I go to a small layout, you'll notice that now all three of these cards look the same. Because literally, these grids are the same. I just copied and pasted this card stack on the page 3 times. The only thing is this bottom one I put inside of a 2-column. So if we go ahead and start making this larger, we'll see that at a particular breakpoint right there, this particular card changes its layout. But these ones down here don't. And that's because these cards here never reach the width of these. Now, again, I think I removed it from this page, but let's go ahead and play with it, right? So measure, let's just add a measure stack to this page. Let's just add it right in between there just so we can kind of see. Okay. And for fun, let's go ahead and add it here. I'm going to make this one the browser. Let's go ahead and make let's make this one the parent. And we'll make this one the parent. All right. There we go. All right. Let's preview this. Oops, did I mess up something here? Is it in the, oh, position relative. Aha. Oh, here, let's shove it inside the card. It should be inside the card. All right, there we go. Actually, it should be inside the card section, to be honest with you. There we go. All right, because we're measuring the width of Bento itself, right? Okay, let's look at that now. There we go. All right. So let's just look at this here. Let's look at my grid here. So I said at 600 pixels is medium. Okay. And I'm pretty sure that is where there on medium. If you notice, if we look at the layout, small, the layout looks like this. Medium, the layout looks like this. So on medium, which is 600 pixels, this grid changes. So let's go ahead and go down. Okay. We're now at 554. These cards down here are also at 554. Okay. And the browser is at 574. Here, let's just remove the one from the browser. I think that's just going to be confusing. Okay. So once my layout reaches 600 pixels, let's go. Oh, interesting. It's, this, I bet you this card isn't. Oh, interesting. Position dash relative. Interesting. I'll have to look into that for card, or for measure. I'm sorry. Okay. Ooh, interesting. I think it's. All right. I don't want to debug card or measure stack right now. That's interesting. Okay. It's not taking the padding into account here, so it's going at 600 and some odd pixels here. Okay, 635. It's breaking. Damn, that's gonna bother me until this afternoon when I can go fix that or figure out why. I'll probably update the demo file as well. If you guys have measure, you guys can play with it. Okay. Because this is exactly why I built measure, so that we can measure things like this. But with that said, you'll notice that at a particular breakpoint, this one breaks, but these ones don't. The reason is because the layout of this is based on the width of Bento itself, and Bento down here hasn't reached that width yet. In fact, it never does, right? It never reaches over 600 pixels because it's inside this 2 column. So this allows us to kind of make reusable components that will react to the environment it is inside, the layout that it is inside, right? So yeah, very interesting. This is something, again, called container queries. And if you want to play around with them, they are very interesting. They're an interesting way to use, Bento and create different sorts of layouts now, or reusable components. So that if this was in a grid or in a sidebar, it behaves one way. If it's in the full width page, the layout's different, right? So something pretty interesting there. Okay, this example does one other thing. Let's go ahead and remove measure for now. So we don't need to look at that. Now, this layout, let's look at this top card. This layout seems pretty simple, right? I just have an image. Why would I need Bento for this? It's just an image with a title and a paragraph down here. And then down here, it just kind of shifts over. That layout looks simple. However, it is not possible using columns unless you try to employ some hackery. Okay. Something like that just is not possible. So let's look at how I built that layout. And I just realized it's 12:15 and I haven't even looked at Bento scroll yet. Okay. So if we look at this Bento grid here, you'll look at here, the column for number 1 is set to 2 items high. Okay, so that's the image, that's my icon, and that goes 2 high. And then on small, it goes it's a 1 by 1. And then the third one expands out. So with this sort of layout, we have a lot of very easy, this is much easier with Bento than it is with a normal column stack. Okay. Another thing, I'm not going to dive into all the details right now, but there's also advanced sizing where you can actually define custom sizing for columns. Okay. Most of the time you're not going to need this. In this particular example, we actually do need it. Okay. It just has to, by default, Bento is going to always want to kind of equalize the columns. So if we look at column 1 and column 2 here, we can go ahead and equalize these columns, or not equalize them. So I wanted to find some custom sizing for those. And we can define that for all breakpoints. And this definitely is sort of advanced because I couldn't come up with a nice way of creating settings around this, okay, other than just having a way for you to type in the options here. And this is some new CSS units that I bet most of you are not aware of. So like, for example, I could do something like 50 pixels, right? Or we're at small. So I could do like, 50 pixels, okay? And if you notice, that actually did change, right? But so you can actually do pixel-based sizing. Auto will basically allow it to fit the content, which is what we wanted, right? We want the column to fit the row, that image, okay? And then there's this new unit called fractions, which I guess I'll do a brief interaction with this. So fractions, think of, you have a 3-column, okay? And you have 3 equal columns on a page, and they are all 1 FR. They're all equal. They're all the same fraction, okay? Now, if I take column 2 and assign that to be 2 FR, okay, what that means is column 2 is going to be 2 times bigger than column 1 and column 3. Okay, so essentially it just means if column 1 is 1 FR, column 2 is 2 FR, and column 3 is 1 FR. Right? Basically means column 2 will be 2 times bigger than column 1 and column 3. Pretty interesting. It's a very interesting unit in new unit in CSS. It allows you to do kind of fractional math rather than saying, oh yeah, I need this one 25% and this one 50% and this one 25%, right? You don't need to do that math in your head. Just say, I want it to be a fraction, which is kind of interesting. So anyway, probably more on these later on. Definitely semi-advanced, but once you kind of get maybe some ideas, it's not too crazy. And you will have to have, so if my grid was 3 columns wide, this one's only a 2x2, you basically have to have a unit here for each column, okay, or row. So anyway, all right, that's enough about that. Let's go ahead and let's go into Bento scroll. Okay. This one's kind of cool. All right, so in this example, this was interesting. I did this on Hangout. Okay, I forgot about that. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna hide that one for now. All right, cool. All right, so here, in this demo, okay, I'm actually I use particle generator, which is a part of my slot machine stacks, to generate a ton of fake data. Okay, just to have a really nice layout. Again, we've already seen how you can use feeds. I don't have an example yet of total loop, but you'll be able to use total loop here as well. You can also use total CMS integration through feeds. Okay, but you can definitely use total loop in here. I don't think we'll ever get blog list in here. You'll have to use total loop, okay, or feeds for a blog list. Okay, just I know someone's going to ask that. It's not going to happen. Okay, for this one, this one is far out, way different than something like Moving Box, where I was able to kind of hack it in there. Okay. All right, so here I'm just using particle generator. I'm not going to explain what this does. Essentially, it just generates 50 items based on some sample data sets, and it created here 50 different items that I could then define my layout for. All right, so again, I'm not going to review particle generator. Just believe me that it generates 50 random blocks that have different colors and different sizes for us. Okay. And just like when we did feeds in the Bento grid, there are 2 stacks. We have a Bento content and a Bento rule. Now, if you wanted to manually, let's go ahead and turn off this so people can visualize things a little bit better. Let's shrink that and shrink that. Basically, there's 2 plus buttons for Bento scroll. There is your Bento content and your Bento rule. Okay. So and those behave exactly like they did inside the Bento grid, where you add your content down here, and then you add all of your rules up here. So what are rules? Hey, let's start looking at the rules. So in this first rule, we'll see that we have the ability to, actually, I'm going to go ahead and just like we did on the other page, in order to demonstrate the rules, we're going to go ahead and add a new instance to the page. All right, Bento scroll. All right. And let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so we can play around and see. All right. So inside Bento scroll, you can either do an auto grid or you can do explicit grids like we did inside Bento grid. Now with auto grid, you can actually choose the minimum width and the minimum width of each one, right? So it's going to build your grid based on how wide you want each individual cell in the grid to be. Okay, so if they can be, if you allow each minimum width to be smaller, you can get more. You can get more cells on each. Okay, or you can do an explicit one where you're like, just like in grid, in the Bento grid, you can choose on large, I want 3, or I want 5, or whatever. Right? Okay. All right. So let's play around with what a rule is. What a rule does is in Bento grid, we defined a rule was one item, but here it's impossible for me to know how many items we're going to have in here so I need to create general rules for this layout. So we have various ways of targeting items. You can do the very first item, the last item, all odd items, all even items, an exact item, so like the 10th one or the 5th one or something like that. The nth item, so like every third. And then you can also do a custom CSS selector. Okay, so let's do nth. I think this is going to be a good one. So here we can target every third item. And as you see, just like Bento grid, it nicely highlights each one so we can see what we are targeting. And then we can now size those things. So let's say for every third one, I wanted those to be a 2x2. So if I can grow the columns by 2, and I can click on rows, and I can grow the rows by 2 as well. So here I'm starting to build out my grid. And then based on that, I can add another rule. And let's say my very first item, right? And let's change the color a little bit. My first item, I want that to be, I'm just going to target large for right now. I want it to be a 4x4. I want it to be really big. That looks really, really big, actually. Let's do 3. Okay, 3x4. Make it taller. Okay. So there we go. So now we're kind of getting towards some interesting things, right? And then you can add another rule. All right. You could just keep adding these rules. So instead of first item, let's go to every, let's do the exact item. So let's say on the 10th item, okay, on number 10, I want this to be, okay, so that's special. On the 10th item, I want to expand that one to be a 3x1, right? So you see, we can kind of build out this grid of rules to kind of give us some sort of random nature, right? So this is a really cool, again, this sort of edit mode interface is totally new, okay? I think it's pretty interesting and intriguing, but it's completely new, never done before to my knowledge, okay? So now we can build out these rules to kind of target and create our grid. Now you might be thinking, well, Joe, like how am I going to do that? Like, okay, let's look at this now. Now that you see how we kind of can use that to build out our grids, let's look at that real life example. Okay, so let's go back to this example here and see what I did. I actually did a lot, probably more here than I should have. I think normally in grids, you're going to have like 3 or 4 rules tops. Okay. I think I was showing off some stuff in this and I kind of went a little overboard with these rules. Okay. But normally, here, let's delete. Well, let's look at some of these. So here we already see this is nth item, the third. So this is going to do the very third item or every third item, right? Here, let's change the color so it's okay. And then this one does every 5th item, right? And then this one does the very first item, which is number 1. And this one does the nth item. Okay. Now I should have to note, I think I was playing with this. I was showing how things overrode each other. Okay. Because for example, here I have the third item, every third. Okay. But number 3 isn't getting applied here. Okay. Because down here I have every odd rule. Okay. So I'm here. This particular one is finding every odd item. Okay. I think I should delete that. It's probably going a little bit crazy. There we go. So that every odd one was basically overriding potentially previous rules, right? So your rules do have hierarchy to them, so that you can kind of build very interesting layouts. Let's go ahead and see how that changed my layout. So there we go. As you see, this is building a very intriguing, very interesting layout. Now, one thing I hid before, which is interesting, is I wanted to. So all this data here is dynamic, right? It's getting generated in this case by particle generator, but it could be generated by total CMS or feeds or whatever. Okay, it doesn't matter. Bento doesn't know about it; just does the layout. It's up to you to build your content. So inside here, I wanted, let's say, inside of my dynamic data, I want to inject an advertisement. Okay, I think that's going to be a common thing. So here, what I did is I added underneath the particle generator that generates all the content, I added one piece of static content. Okay, and it's just, and I put a custom class on it called advertisement. If we look up here, I have a Bento rule for advertisement. Okay. And what it does is it will actually move this item to be in the first column, third row. Okay. So there it goes. That custom advertisement is now in the first column, third row. So it's kind of mixed in with my dynamic content. It's pretty interesting. So now, if I wanted 2 or 3 of these, I can then position these throughout my layout and kind of, I think advertisements is a clear use case for this, where you're going to be, integrating those ads within your dynamic or static content. Okay, so I think that's pretty interesting. I forget what this last demo is here. I forget exactly what I was doing here. I think here I was just kind of playing around with different customizations for each, to kind of get an idea. Yeah. Oh, here I was. I'm building. This is the layout for the actual Weaverspace homepage. So yeah, I was building that exact layout. So you guys can kind of see how that layout is built using Bento. Okay. Well, guys, there you have it. That is Bento. I think it's super powerful, and I am really excited. The whole point of this pre-launch was to get it into your hands so that we can then work together to come up with amazing layouts together. So please go ahead and join the Bento space on the community. Okay. And I see some of you have, because some of you have already liked the post. You can purchase it here. I saw, Brian, that you said there was some sort of Stripe API error. I will look into that right now, and I'll post a reply here on the community. Okay, with what happened. Maybe I put the wrong link or something. I'm not sure what I did, or maybe it's just a temporary glitch. But I'll definitely look into that. Cool. Any other questions? Let's see. Before we leave, let's see if I missed anything. Can the stack be used to construct full landing pages, or is it used to limit the specific sections on a page? I mean, are you thinking to use this to like build the entire structure of a page? I don't see why that couldn't be used for that. Yeah, especially Bento grid. Like if you used it as like general layout for your page, like this is my header. That's something we can definitely play around with. And if I need to add anything, we definitely can. To do that. But I don't see why you couldn't use this as a general all global page layout, utility. You can have bentos inside of bentos. That is possible. So yeah. I don't see why that wouldn't be an issue, Albert. But yeah, if you want to help play around with that, definitely, do that. So let's do it. Why is 3? Oh, I meant, why is 3 smaller than 6 and 9? Sorry, I'm not sure exactly why what you're referring to there. I'm sure it was in the demo. But if you want to join Friday, we can have a live hangout on Fridays, and I'm sure I'll be fielding questions about this, and speaking about why is this item larger than this item, and whatnot. I fielded a few of those questions in past hangouts, and yeah, we were able to figure that out. Okay, I think. Yep. Okay, I think I answered all the questions. Sweet, guys. I hope you enjoy Bento. I think it's pretty cool. There definitely is, again, something different about, like, it is very different than other things out there, but I think I've given us the ability to create these pretty complex layouts, okay? Visually, right? It was not easy. It was a challenge, and it took a lot of thinking on how to create this sort of editing layout within edit mode. And I think it's pretty simple to use for building something like these particular layouts. Mark asks, will there be a summit this year? So I've been waiting for Stacks. I was waiting for Stacks Pro. I really wanted to have a summit with Stacks Pro for us. And as you know, you probably are aware of Isaiah's situation. He had a skateboarding accident, and he's been MIA, or out of commission, for a little bit. So that definitely delayed things more than I would have cared. He is getting back to work, though. He actually has been getting code done in the past week or so. So he's recovering, and yeah, it has put a little hamper on our timeline. So I've been wondering what to do about that since it did hamper the timeline. I may do a small, like, 1-day event. I'm talking to a few the normal speakers to see maybe if they want to speak, but I do think maybe doing a 1-dayer or something like that, by the end of the year could be interesting. It's quite short notice to do something, but I think a 1-day thing we could put together. I don't think I'll be able to do a 3-day summit, by the end of the year. But maybe we could put together a 1-day. So if you think that's interesting, let me know. Shoot me an email or post on the community. And I'd be happy to try to put that together if someone's interested with that. So cool. Yes, it is a visual CSS grid. If you didn't know, the technology behind Bento is CSS grid, which is like the latest CSS layout technologies, right? So This definitely does use CSS Grid, and it is a way of, handling all of that. So cool. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoy this. I can't wait to see you on the Bento space, and the Hangout on Friday, where we can then talk one-on-one, and see what you're building with Bento, and give you some feedback and give me some feedback so I can make it even better. So cool. Take care, everyone. We will talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your week, and go out there and make your websites great.